while they're running. So without further ado, we have Dr. Doorn here today, and he's going to explain to you, and we're going to ask him questions about his platform, why he's running, and what he sees, for the foreseeable future for Columbus. So again, sir, welcome. Thank you for being here today. And if you would please not explain, but just go ahead and give a quick, maybe 1 or 2, 3 minutes. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, and so forth.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Dr. Nicole, for the wonderful invitation. It's such an honor to be here with you. My name is John Van Doorn. I'm actually a native of Columbus, Georgia. I grew up here, went through all of its public schools, and proud product of Columbus High, go Blue Devils. I then went and traveled a lot of the world. I got 2 masters and a PhD along the way. Masters in International Relations, Masters in Political Science. I'm a certified legal assistant, so I've also worked in law firms. And I have a PhD in American, International, and Comparative Politics. So about as broad as you can get in the political science field. And I love that because it lets me integrate a lot of the pieces and pull them together. So, Columbus is now Georgia's 2nd largest city, and we, I think, deserve a city council that is frankly far more professional than some of the things we've seen here that befits a growing city with challenges, but I'm bullish on Columbus. I believe Columbus's best days are ahead. I think that we are going to be an example to a lot of other cities in the South, but if we take our problems seriously. So that's where I believe my 35 years of teaching and knowledge of policy and political science is key, that knowledge base. And then I have 20 years of actual practical politics. I've been in the trenches, I've been to Atlanta and back, I know our state delegation very well, got good working relationships with lots of folks. Of course, I'm delighted to know the chambers, and what a fine job that Travis does as the other at-large rep, and he as president of the school board. So those kind of relationships and that kind of knowledge are key. But I think it's about more than just qualifications. I think, when you elect someone to city council, they need to show the right kind of temperament, the right kind of judgment, because you never know exactly what issues are going to come up, and you've got to be able to deal with those rationally, analytically, for the benefit of all citizens. So as I have here my little flyer, my North Star is public voice, is public opinion. That may seem like a crazy idea in a democracy, right? Public opinion matters in a democracy. But I don't really think we've ever had a scientific poll about what people in Columbus, Georgia really think about the biggest issues of the day. Now, I'm not going to promise we're going to do that on every issue, but we should do this at least once or twice a year, and I believe we can do that for a fraction of what we're spending on some of these consultative studies. I mean, that's my opinion. And I know I have partners at UGA and elsewhere that can help me carry out those kinds of polls. I'm also listening to citizens. I have been on the ground 2 or 3 times a week. I just got back from knocking lots of doors, talking to a lot of people, asking what is your number 1 issue? What is your number 2 issue? And I'm sitting back and I'm listening to the answer. So I think that's so key for someone who wants to represent, not just the district, but the entire city. So my vision for Columbus, in just a nutshell, is a city that is more healthy, that has green grocers in every neighborhood, that has public squares so people can talk to each other face to face. That's why I love organizations like yours, because it's a physical space where people can come and talk and get off the phone and actually have a real human conversation. So God bless what you do. It is so important. It is a city that unifies around the biggest challenges facing us, but one that celebrates our diversity. Diversity is a strength. It is not a bad word. And I'll keep saying that as long as I possibly can. Our cultures, our music, all the things that various folks from North, South, East, and West Columbus bring are to be celebrated. And I would love us maybe to have like a round robin. So we get, East Columbus meets South Columbus meets West Columbus. There's a lot of fun things we can do as part of that overall vision. Integrity is the foundation of my campaign. I believe that you need to do the same thing in public as you do in private, that you walk the walk and you don't just talk the talk. I have challenges. I have a difficulty with one of my opponents that I believe didn't keep his word, and I believe that Columbus voters will remember that when it comes election time. You've got to keep your word, whether that's a gentleman's agreement or whether it's not. Integrity also, again, means listening to the public and then translating that into public policy. And then that goes to my third foundation, and that's competence. competence, right? We can have all the vision in the world, we can have maybe good integrity. By the way, I'm an Eagle Scout, elder in my church, all those good things I think, help me be a pretty ethical kind of individual. But if you don't have the competence to help, enact those into policies, then you're kind of like a speedboat, without an engine. You got a good rudder, but you're not going anywhere. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of my overall biography, if you will, and reason for running.
Okay. All right. So we appreciate the introduction. And I guess we're going to jump right into the questions.
Sure.
So my first question to you would be, with a lot that has gone on with City Council, what things do you see that maybe have been done poorly that you would do different?
Where do I start? No, I'm just kidding. I think the City Council does a good job, and I would never underestimate how difficult, how demanding the job is. I mean, just for someone sitting there and watching it, and I know all the prep that goes on to it, that I'm not going to come, well, I can do it all better. So I start with appreciation of what City Council does. But certainly the grandstanding, the hyperbolic language, really erodes trust. And again, trust is one of my key parts of my vision. I think trust has been eroded not only in the community, between communities, but between the community and City Council, and between City Council and city employees. The current member very much excluded from this description, but a number of folks there seem to want to use every opportunity to get TV time, grandstand, often not really talking about substance. Along with that, these individuals tend to have kind of a short-range focus. They don't tend to do a lot of long-range planning. So I think, having those retreats, and I know you all have retreats, but more of those where you plan. For example, I think we could really use what I call an industrial employment policy for the city. And that takes time, and that takes getting together with subject matter experts, folks of like mind, and to really systematically enact those long-range plans. So I think there's definitely room for improvement for a number of posts. Again, 10 very much excluded from that analysis.
Okay, I'm a big advocate of, you don't need a title or a position to demonstrate leadership. So is this your first time running for elected position in the city? And if so, also what can you tell us you've done in the city, in your communities, to show us that you are committed to more than just a title and a position?
Right. I'm at the point in my life where I feel like I really don't need a title and position. I've worked with ambassadors, with presidents. For me, that is not at all the reason I'm running. I'm running again because I think the city needs my abilities, and I bring that to the city. I guess going back to the essence of it, I have been involved both as a youth and then coming back in practical politics. I have been twice chair of a local party. Again, this is a nonpartisan race, but I've done that. I've been vice chair. I've been state representative. I've served on lots of committees. So the nitty-gritty of policy, of actually enacting it, helping folks run successful elections, including Sanford Bishop. Sometimes it's really close. I have been part of local initiatives. One of the ones I thought was the most promising, but just ended abruptly, was called Be the Bridge, and it was a community-wide effort between houses of worship of all types to try to address those historical patterns of discrimination, frankly, institutionalized racism, which again, as a citizen of Columbus, I'm so well aware of. But just as it was really starting, I think, to get somewhere, it just ended. So I think the City Council could really, one of the things it can do for no tax money is basically be a coordinating body, being a good bridge itself. I'd love to see that kind of initiative at a citywide level, because I think there's so much more work to be done in terms of racial reconciliation, again, bridging between different communities, and that work has just been done. It seems like most folks just kind of want to sweep it under the carpet and say, oh, that's the past, it's fine, but I think all of us can agree it's not fine, and we have lots more work to do. So that's one I'm most proud of. I've been the president of Downtown Historic District Preservation Society. We did a lot of work not just in preserving those homes, but having community-wide events, bringing participation. I've been on HCF, which is also Historic Columbus Foundation. I was on the board of Westville, that brought Westville from Lumpkin up to here. And I'm happy to say that it's starting to, had a tough time during the pandemic, but it's starting to come back up again. I've been active in my church. I've been head of Fellowship and Evangelism for outreach programs. It's one of the reasons I know a little bit about the food truck situation and how difficult it is to get quality food. Lots of regulations I think we can simplify on city council. Other things are state of Georgia, I understand that. I was working with the food truck group down in South Columbus last week, and we are trying to get an organized group, interest group, so they can have a more effective voice in front of city council, maybe in front of the state. I've been, parts of other different groups that have tried to reach out and bring more harmony to our community. Lots of work to be done, though. And I admit, when I was writing my last book and when my parents were passing away, 4 or 5 years, I kind of had to step back from that. But now that my children are grown and I'm online teaching, I've got the time and the ability to fully engage in this demanding position.
And I want to speak specific to like the homeless, the unhoused concern we have, the blight. As an at-large position, like you cover a lot of the city, and specifically right here in the heart of District 7 where we are, we have went back and forth with the city on specific, I don't know which way you came in, but there's a house for the past 2 years that I've communicated back and forth with our current city councilor with no resolve. What is your work, your leadership, your demonstration of leadership in those types of areas?
I've helped build houses for the homeless, both here with Habitat. I went to Guatemala and built houses for the homeless, so I'm personally very much invested in trying to address that. But going back to trust integrity, it's about being responsive, being present. I don't know why the current holder didn't respond to you. I just think that's not right, that you deserve an answer, even if the answer is, gosh, we don't have the budget right now, but hey, here's some other groups that could help this individual or help bring this up to code. So that's what I mean about being a coordinating function. And I'm committed to getting out in every neighborhood once a month. It's one of the things I'd like to do, walk the neighborhood, on my bike, not drive by in a car and say, hey, I went to that neighborhood, it's 60 miles an hour. No, I stop and talk with neighbors, and I listen to what was important to them. And, I don't see a lot of that, certainly not by the current occupant of District 9. I don't see him out there at all listening to these kinds of concerns. You would have to pledge as an Eagle Scout and so forth that I would be out there and listen. Even if, again, I would have to say, we don't have the budget to really tackle that, but certainly with codes and inspection and certainly with other groups, we could help address that particular situation.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have the Columbus app on your phone? Do you have receipts?
311? I know of it. I think it could be improved from what I understand.
Okay. All right. So that's what we use currently as citizens to request assistance, for areas. And so we just wanted to know if that was part of something you already used to help in the community. Yeah,
a model that I'm familiar with is the Minneapolis 311 app, and it is like state of the art, and it goes beyond just generically switching. It's like it goes straight to the official that is responsible for that, and it really cuts down on the time. So yeah, I'd love to compare and see if we could learn from Minneapolis or if we really are up there. But that's definitely a high-tech way to cut down call times and response times.
All right. So collaboration is definitely something that's important to my wife and I. Not only us, but the citizens in Columbus. Concerning things that are happening in Columbus right now, in the current city council, what would you say that you see is the biggest issue facing Columbus right now and the biggest priority that Columbus should be concerned about right now? Can you speak to how you would, if you were elected in this upcoming election, how you would prioritize or do things differently as far as things that are plaguing the city or the #1 priority in the city right now moving forward?
The number one problem I see in Columbus is what I call siloization and the decline in trust, and the two are very much related. So, I'm not sugarcoating. When I was a kid, it wasn't a beautiful situation, and we went through our struggles when I was a kid. But in some ways, I've seen things kind of going backwards in the last, 2, 4, 5 years, where people are, raising higher walls. They're retreating into their silos. They're talking to folks that maybe look and talk like them, right? And when that happens, then trust starts to devolve. And I did my dissertation on the democratic transition in Spain. And some places in Spain had a high level of this trust, confianza in Spanish, and some did not. And those that did not were just markedly different in how effective government was, how responsive it was in those areas that did. And I see some of those trends here in Columbus, unfortunately, that when that trust starts to downward spiral and people think their voice just doesn't matter, then they begin to turn toward other alternatives, or they just begin to check out, and things get worse and worse. So again, that's to me why building those bridges, why stitching together communities, which I have here at the top of my little flyer, is the way to start to address the biggest problem. Because if you don't have trust, you really can't do anything, right? You can't enact effective policy. People won't bring their concerns to city council. And I also see it between somewhat city council and city employees. I mean, that's one of the takeaways of the Malden and Jenkins risk assessment report, which is pretty obvious to anyone kind of watching it, is that people in public service feel devalued. And I certainly see that in some of the comments I hear regularly from some members who very much excluding Travis on city council. One thing I really appreciate about Travis, by the way, is he speaks when he has something to say, he says it well, and then he doesn't go on. So, in many ways, you're a role model for me, Travis. I appreciate what you do.
And I would like to add to that what you just mentioned, because I believe as citizens we are confused a little bit. We received a report from the consultants who've been with the city council for years. They said for 35 years there's been an excellent report, no issues in finance. So when you hear that and you go back to a few months later in the past where it was 45 million, 46 million, and 26 million, and all these issues, it's confusion. And no one's bringing clarity outside of the fact that I would say that the staff felt devalued when she asked, okay, so it's been 35 years to prove a point that these are the standings, but at the same time, foundationally, the consulting company has been there the entire time too. So who's telling the truth? Why is there confusion? And when, as a city councilor, do you make sure your constituents understand, word for word, what exactly is going on, and not leave us in the blue?
That's a great question. And there are two foundational questions in politics. The first one is whose voice matters, in whose voice. And the second one is in whose interest. And I think this is probably a crystal clear example of where the voice of the public has been ignored, and the interests are those who perhaps are themselves seeking office. In Spain there's a whole science, it's called escándalos, right? So it's the science of making a scandal. And it's a proven technique. If you want to get elected to office, you create this giant smoke screen, and again, I think there's a lot more smoke here than there is fire, and then you ride it to glory. So again, without naming names, I've seen a pattern of folks who just have this drumbeat of scandal, which again contradicts the facts of, we're one of the best run cities in Georgia for many, many years, on time, good infrastructure, and then, no, this is like, there's all this theft and scandals going on. So again, ask those questions. Whose voice are we listening to, or is the loudest, and in whose interest is that policy being enacted? So I think the answers are somewhat clear. I don't know what your position is, by the way, on the data center, and I'm a conduit, but what I'm hearing out there, and again, I'm looking at thousands of doors. Data center is the most frequently occurring thing. And it's not so much everybody's against it, it's just that those foundational decisions already seem to have happened in private, and after the fact, we're being sold, oh, this is just the greatest thing ever. And so that's the kind of process that we've seen, and I think it speaks also to what you're talking about. And again, I would pledge, and that's what I mean by transparency, right? When you know about something that's important, you get out the information and you solicit, you listen carefully to what people really want, really think.
And I'll say that I was at the last PAC meeting, and they tabled a decision to have the land, developed for the data center or whatever center that would go there. And then they stated that it would go on to the city council to have the final decision. Well, of course I have concern about counselors just now doing their research, suggesting they don't know about it and things of that nature, when in fact it seems like they do. It started with them, the process started with them in the first place. And so people are showing up, they're voicing their opinions. The PAC tabled the decision, but I have concern that city council will not. Now, we've heard a lot of good information on why we should have it. It's going to bring revenue. We've heard a lot of good information on why we shouldn't have it, but it's the transparency piece. As a city councilor, what would you have done to make sure your constituents were very well aware of what's going on with the data centers?
To me, this is like a technical example of why public opinion polling is so important. So, again, if we could have taken the time to be poll on something that's important, that's great. But there's shortcuts we can do. We can do like DeKalb County does. They have what's called sortition. I don't know if Travis has heard about this. This is where they take the voter rolls and they randomly select voters, and then they get them together, and then they, discuss the issue and get that feedback. So at the very beginning of the process, that's what we should have been doing, is see what the public really wants and really thinks. Now, I'm also not naive enough to think that the public is going to speak clearly on every issue. Sometimes they don't. And that's where you again want to let someone with good judgment, good discernment, good knowledge to try to make the best decision they can based on sometimes limited information. But again, I think the data center is just an example of where there wasn't even an attempt to solicit, inform public opinion. And I was going to ask Travis, maybe you can answer this, maybe you're off the record, but I think that City Council can override the PAC, because the PAC, as the middle name suggests, is just an advisory body. So, as we saw, when I spoke up against at that time, the mayor was saying, don't appoint this guy with no due process, and then they go ahead and do it anyway. Would we have a similar, that's theoretically possible, right? So, I think a lot of people are very concerned that there may be a couple of readings, but by the end of March, it might be a done deal.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us what's one decision that you expect to be unpopular, but you would still be willing to support? Because a lot of times, candidates say, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, and they say a lot of yeses, but you rarely hear no's when it's campaign time. So if you could speak to that, tell us one decision that you expect to be unpopular, but you still be willing to support.
Well, it's a no-brainer budget, right? You are never going to please all the people all the time. And, I would recommend that we do a zero-based budgeting exercise at least once every few years. It's a really difficult process. But, instead of just across-the-board budget cuts, which, again, one of my opponents, that's what they're proposing, that just guts and destroys a lot of good stuff. But you do have to then look line by line and make your best informed judgment. This is performing better. This is what people want. We're going to increase this, but given our budget situation, we may have to decrease this a little bit. And, in that case, whoever's getting decreased is not going to be happy. And, it may even be a popular thing. So you might have to make that decision based, again, on the best information you have at the time. And, I'm willing to make those tough decisions to keep the city solvent, because we don't have the luxury of running massive deficits like the federal government does, And, again, full transparency, there are a lot of cuts coming down. Travis knows this probably better than anybody, but, with housing and urban development, with various programs, those are being cut at the federal level. So painful decisions are going to have to be made. And we'll, I guess, do the best we can with grants and what we can do. But I can almost foresee that happening here in the next few years.
And I believe people can accept decisions that they don't agree with, if they trust and believe that that counselor has their best interest at heart, and then if there's a pattern of actually seeking constituents' feedback. And I feel like what we have going on today is we see, not by everyone, but there's a lot of emotional systems in place as opposed to, a clear-cut rubric so we can understand from the public's perspective what has happened. So can you speak to how you would make sure your communication efforts to ensure constituents understood? Because we go to the meeting, we listen to the meeting, we are not getting all the full story of what everything means and why. How would you improve that?
Well, yeah, I think a sortition would just be an excellent thing. We get a group together, again, they're randomly chosen. We give them a list of priorities, and we say, okay, rank this 1 to 10. What are your most important priorities, and what are your least? And we use that kind of public opinion as a rough guide to make decisions about what to more fully fund and to what less fund. Now, I'm not in the room, but my assumption is that folks kind of bring their own preferences, they argue about it, and they hash that out over a few work sessions, and then they do the best they can, to present it after the fact. But I don't have a sense that there is any sort of public input up at the front end of the process. And of course, you've got various departments that, the solicitor guy, I know he's a great guy, and he feels like he's really underfunded. And he was told to come back, and then they didn't entertain him again. So I too wonder, is there a rational budgeting process here? Again, I'd like to see it start from scratch, probably not the first year, but maybe the second year I'm in office, and look at line by line based on public priorities, public input, and then justify it that way.
Because to your point with the Solicitor General, this is not new news. And 2022 District DA Stacy brought it to their attention that the judge, not having enough judges was a concern and the workload for them. So here we are, 16,000 cases backlog. And, it was very disheartening to feel as if that was not a care for our city council. I cannot, from Mr. Davis, was very hard to swallow. Being as though we are military, we have, we know some warrant officers who knew someone who sat in the jail for 2 years and they were innocent. So, that should not be okay.
No.
That's what citizens care about.
Right.
Those people are still citizens of our city. Knowing that you only have one vote and one voice, how do you work to influence or, get people on board to do what's right for the citizens in this case?
First of all, it's always about preparation, right? You know your brief, you show up, you understand the whole picture, right? You understand how this piece affects that piece. It takes a lot of prior preparation. And I get it. These are part-time positions. They're all that well paid. People like me, they have other jobs. But still, there needs to be, especially in budget season, more preparation that you really understand how each piece affects the other. And to me, that's one of the beauties of public opinion. If you come in there with public opinion, yeah, you're right, you're just one person, but this is what the public actually thinks, right? This is your armament that you can take in there and say, let's do some reprioritization over what we've been doing in the past. Now, one of the offices I worked for was the UN ambassador, and he taught me a lot about conflict resolution, a lot about diplomacy, and we're definitely going to need some of that, going forward. But I respect everyone's opinion. I listen usually before I speak, and get it all out on the table, and then let's take public opinion and do the best we can to match it with our resources.
All right. So with that in mind, what parts of Columbus do you see are left behind or being left behind? And as a potential city council member, what are you prepared, or what's your solution to fix that?
Yeah, it's so clear that the main road divide is very real. I do ride my bike around the entire city, and the difference between some of the developments in the northern, and again there are exceptions, and the south is stark. There's a book educated by the name of Jonathan Kozol called Savage Inequalities, in some ways that really describes the differences in some of our schools, but really in the infrastructure. That's why I'm so keen on requiring developers, when they want to develop a new area or refurbish it, that they must put aside what I call a little public square. And that has to have shops where people want to gather, have stalls for greengrocers. What I like about a number of cities, they have what's called a 15-minute rule. That means you don't have to walk more than 15 minutes to get really nutritious food. Not a Dollar General, right? Not that canned stuff. We all know it's not good for us. But really nutritious. Much of this is non-perishable, right? If you go to Europe and other cities, they'll just be nice little stalls. And we've got a lot of farmers around here. We used to have a big farmers market, no longer. We've got a little thing on Saturdays. But this needs to be permanent for each neighborhood. So I think that would bring a lot of health, a lot of vitality, a lot of citizen spirit. I'm working again with the food truck folks to set up what I call enterprise funds. And again, we see this in other parts of the world, at Grameen Bank, that sort of thing, where the citizens, first of all, or the folks in the industry, pay into that fund. That helps them get to the ups and downs of the business cycle, get through tough times. Each person pays in, kind of takes out in kind of a round robin kind of way. In the city, if we could make a small investment in those funds, it would do amazing things to help people start up. And because I think small business really is the vital heart of most communities, and I think it's definitely going to be that way in South Columbus. Now, I also think we should bring in, whenever we can, bigger industries that can produce a lot of jobs. Data centers are not one of those, unfortunately. But, Pratt's and Whitney's and things like that. We used to have quite an industrial corridor along 6th Street. And we lost a lot of jobs when the incentives for those industries went away. So when we're thinking about incentives, what kind of industries do we attract that will have those good paying jobs? And I'd love to see us work as much as we can with the utility companies to lower the costs. I have an idea called EAD, and this is probably really fanciful, but I call it an energy allocation district. So if we could generate more power in a district than we use reverse metering and give folks a credit there, because affordability and utility bills, almost everybody's out there is hurting, and we need to do whatever we can to address that.
Now, you've had a new candidate enter the race on Friday, at the very last minute, and then you have 2 or 3 other candidates outside of the one that's currently in the seat. What are you doing to stand out, to run the race in a way that makes you the candidate to choose?
Well, I'm doing work. I don't want to talk bad about any other candidate or campaign. That's not the kind of guy that I am. I don't see them knocking doors, meeting people where they live in the neighborhoods, really listening to them. I've been doing this since the fall. I started in the summer, and this takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of hard work. And people I meet at the door really, you're the first person I've ever seen, out here from city council or any position, that's fantastic, So that is the heart of it, is going out there talking, listening carefully to what they have to say. I'm also trying to tell folks that experience, much like Kia was saying, experience and knowledge really do matter. So if you want a more professional city council, then let's choose folks who have that background. I like to get into likes and dislikes. I appreciate all of my opponents. They all have an interesting set of skills. But when, I'm not going to go do brain surgery, and a brain surgeon without this kind of training is probably not the best fit for this position. So, I'm on social media. I'm out there, and you've made some great suggestions, by the way. I'm out there trying to tell folks how I'm different, how I have this knowledge that I can apply to the position. Can always do more, and I wish I had, didn't need sleep, because that would be great. But I really think I'm doing the work. But again, I'm all ears if you got other suggestions.
We have.
Yeah, I was just about to go there.
Questions.
Yep.
Miss Debbie.
All right, gotta let the change go.
Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you very much for asking my questions.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Miss Debbie, did you have anything?
Yeah, I have some concerns.
Okay.
So I am technically, I'm in District 1. I've been in District 1 for over 30 years. And how do you feel about other citizens, like you run at large, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
So how do you feel about being there, you know, for the needs of other districts, even though you're running for a certain district, but you're at large? And I live in District 1 and I come to you or whatever, with my concerns for whatever reasons I do. Are you going to be, even though you're at large, are you going to be as proactive with the other districts as you are with yours? You know, with you being at large, how would you do that? And in other words, if I need you, I want to be able to call you.
Yep.
You know, just please tell me how are you going to do that?
Right, that's such a great question. And I take the at-large very seriously. So if you call me, you have a need, I mean, probably the first call I'm going to do is call the District 1 rep and say, are you aware of this? You know, have you had a chance to address this? And if they just say, too busy, whatever, then I'm going to try to do my best to address your concern. Absolutely. And, you know, I'll give people a phone number that they can reach me at, addresses, and I respond to my emails. And I'm a professor. I'm up late at night responding to lots of emails. So I'm really good at responding to emails and calls and texts. So absolutely, I'm not going to step on the District 1 rep, right? I'm going to see if that rep will respond first. But if they won't, then I'm going to respond for you. One of my models is a mayor, actually, who walks around his city at least 2 or 3 times a month. And he walks every neighborhood and he invites everybody in that neighborhood, please come join me and come talk to me as we walk. And I think that's such a great way to listen to people in a natural, you know, it's a win-win, we get exercise, we're having a good time. But it's a great way to hear from folks. I would rotate town halls in every district of the city. I don't think we have nearly enough town halls in the city. And again, I'm sure people are busy, whatever, but to me, that's the basics of what you've got to do. You've got to go to every neighborhood and listen to what the people have to say. Then I work with the other, 9 folks to get it, done, and the mayor.
Okay, my other concern is, and I don't apologize for asking you this, okay? Can you be very transparent and say that you know there are race issues in the city of Columbus?
Oh, absolutely. I know there are race issues in Columbus. I mean, that's why I thought being a bridge was so important, and we need to continue that dialogue. As a professor, I've studied institutionalized racism and how redlining and all of that works, and I see it still existing, even though it's not as obvious as it once was. I see how difficult it is for people to get loans and get capital, depending on which part of the city they live in. I mean, it is obvious, as we talked about before, with the infrastructure. When I was the chair of the party, I was really proud that we were a big tent party, and that, our leadership was diverse. We were great at talking to each other, listening to each other respectfully. I love being in South Columbus as much as I like being in North Columbus, so I absolutely acknowledge what you were saying. Yes, ma'am.
Can we agree that South Columbus is, when it comes to, I hate going to North Columbus, or I hate is a strong word. I don't like going to North Columbus to the restaurants. And yes, I do patronize my Black-owned restaurants in my neighborhood. But to drive to North Columbus to have a meal, or even I would say hotels, you got family coming in and whatever, to go there and have a meal, I have to drive all the way from Buena Vista Road to North Columbus. And then when you think about the military, okay, we are affiliated with the military. My grandson, and I'm very proud, just graduated from West Point, and a lot of him and his teammates are stationed here. And he was asking me about the communities. When I moved here over 30 years ago, there was nothing positive that anyone was sharing with me. I worked with AT&T about the school system, predominantly black schools, you don't want to go to Carver or whatever. Of course, I have 3 children that graduated from Carver and they've been very successful. And then you don't want to live anywhere on, you don't want to live on this side of making money. Okay, now that my grandson, in so many words, there he was told the same thing at the military base.
Yeah, nothing really changed, yeah.
Oh, you see where I'm going with this? So it's like, damn if we do, damn if we don't. You know, we don't have nothing over in the South Side. We really don't, Sarah.
Yeah.
You know, and then I used to work in North Columbus, and they always had roadblocks, and excuse my language, they always had roadblocks on the South Side. But when I would go to work in the North Side, you would see people driving under the influence, speeding. I saw this with my own eyes. You know, this type of thing, and it's still going on in the city. Yeah. What would you do? Like you say, you're agreeing that this does happen. You agree that we do have race issues, but what can you do? What can you contribute to make it a better place? You know.
Yeah, the challenges are real and they're there. Let's take policing just to start off with. As I talked about here in my material, I believe what I call holistic policing. And that means we go back to a community police-based model, and that means that the officers come out of their cars, they get on foot, they get on bikes, and they develop relationships with the community. I think that helps both the police and the residents, because the residents then can trust the police more, and then the police can see more, you know, about what's actually going on, and not make assumptions about, oh, well, I just need to set up a roadblock here, because I know I'm going to find, you know, X, Y, and Z crime going on. So I think that's so important. We also need to talk about mental health issues around policing. We need to have, you know, these teams that are embedded that can maybe de-escalate a situation before it gets out of hand. Of course, education. I'm an educator. It's so key to help people feel hope and have a way out of a situation that might be very bad. So I think that kind of holistic policing is important. We're going to have to hire a new police chief. Right, Stony I think he's generally done a good job, but again, he hasn't done some of this community ideas that I think is important. So we need to have a city council in place that really looks for police chiefs and, you know, top echelon that will carry out this more community-based policing that doesn't have its own version of redlining. So that's going to be important. Who you vote in May is going to be making those decisions. I talked a little bit about enterprise funds, development funds, and that should help bring more restaurants, more activities that, you know, everybody wants to do. And again, we need to have the physical infrastructure that people want to go to. Now, Isaiah's done a nice job on a lot of roads and so forth. And, you know, I can say when I was a kid, Victory Drive really was bad and dangerous. It looks better than it used to. But we still don't have the kind of industries and you know, small businesses there that we need to have. So I think those small business funds, again, with a minimum investment, could do wonders to bring it up. Now, there are folks on City Council who said they've been trying to bring more restaurant chains to South Columbus, but for some reason it never seems to come to fruition. So I would like to know what's really going on there. Why aren't these chains and other restaurants locating there? Are they misinterpreting? Because I looked at crime statistics. There's crime in North Columbus as well as South. But what is the rational basis for them not coming? So as an at-large rep, I think I could represent the city very well, go to business owners, go to national conferences, find out how other cities are attracting development, you know, in areas that have not had it before. I love to go and talk to like-minded mayors and at-large councilors, and I haven't seen that kind of proactivity with this city council. So again, I bring that kind of energy and that kind of ability to be a very proactive voice to overcome decades, really, generations of north-south problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So my next question in regards to public safety and trust. We just pulled it up. Okay, so what role should City Council play in public safety beyond just approving the police budget?
Yeah, excellent question. I think they need to be much more active, and I just was kind of hinting about that in the response to her question, that we can look to other cities and expand this community policing model, so that, and you know, there'll be some pushback. They're going to say, hey, look, who are you? And we're the professionals, you're not. But if we can build a consensus on city council, then they, you know, that's the role of city council, is to give direction, overall direction. I'm not going to micromanage the police department, you know, but give them overall direction. These are our new priorities. We're out there, you know, we've got the public opinion surveys. These are things that are important to the citizens. So as their representative, we are going to guide you to enact a more holistic model of policing, again, with embedded mental health counselors, with you know, folks on bikes and folks, you know, we have that downtown, uptown as they call it, you know, and it works pretty well, but that's the only part of the city where you see those officers on bikes. And so again, there's a big disparity between what's going on there. And they say, well, we've got to look good for the tourists, but this is something that should be in the whole city. So I would not be shy, and you know, I'm kind of excited that there may be a new majority on city council, and I think we have to change the majority to change this fundamental view of policing and public safety.
And I'm glad that you mentioned a new majority, because while we understand that, you know, we are allowed to vote for at-large seats, we're allowed to vote for our candidate who's representing our direct district, they all still represent us with their decisions and their changes. You know, a lot of people did not agree with the young house being criminalized, so to speak, with the $1,000 fine and then 8 days or you're going to jail type situation, as opposed to starting with research, the task force, and the solutions to helping. While we understand that some people prefer to live off the grid, there should also been, you know, opportunity for that, as opposed to moving straight into the ordinance to criminalize. Now, what I also have shared is that, you know, the dynamics of shelters are complex. If a mom or a dad has a son and a daughter, they can't go into particular shelters. And so you're around the city trying to figure out where you can go, or you're living in hotels. Like, it's very complex. And so what would you do? Because it's a serious concern in this district. Housing camps, homeless camps, all up Victory Drive, all up South Lumpkin. And then what happens is they moved one from a church area, but they left the residue of the buggies, the clothes, the trash. Nobody came and cleaned that up. So what would be your suggestion? They do have a task force, but when we ask where can we find, you know, the progress, what's going on, there's been no feedback. So what would you suggest in better, you know, making a solution for that?
A great question, a difficult question, honestly. A couple things jump to mind. First of all, there is a right-wing bunch of policy folks who write these ordinances, and so what you've seen around the country is this, you know, they're doing no work. They just take this off-the-shelf ordinance, try to apply locally. Oh, outside, out loud, isn't that great? And of course, it's not great. It is, to criminalize homelessness is, to me, immoral. It's wrong, and it does not help them transition to a situation where they have more stable housing and so forth. I know Pat Frey, I've worked with her a little bit. I think they do really good work. There's some pushback that they tend to put too many requirements on the homeless, so I'm very sensitive to that. There's some models in Arizona where they have kind of no questions asked transitional housing, and I think that's a model for us to look at. Let's try to take out the stigma. Let's take out the micromanaging that we do, because gosh, we know best. You know, we're sitting from up here, we haven't been homeless, we don't know what it's like. So that's again why that policy knowledge is so important. We can look at the best models, not in my opinion the worst models, where they're trying to punish people and criminalize them as if this is some moral failing. And you know, that's, well, I don't want to go off my tangent, but anyway, that's where I think we can look at the best models. But will it be easy? No. It's a, you know, it's a chronic problem, but we can do a lot better job of meeting the needs of the unhoused.
And while there is a need for a new jail, should the mental health ward be in the jail as opposed to a state facility or a city facility or a hospital where they can get the care that they need? So what's your thoughts on that?
No,
And
really.
real quick, in answer to that, also, what do you know about West Central?
Yeah, I know a bit about it. I mean, I think they face budget cuts. I think they are inadequate. I was just talking with a behavioral and mental health specialist yesterday, and she was talking about the challenges of the budget cuts and how they try to do as much as they can with the small amounts they have. You know, the jail is just another great example of what we like to do in Columbus is we like to build things, but we don't like to maintain them. And part of that long-range planning is if we're going to build something, we've got to figure out how we maintain it up to standard. I don't think there's any way around a new jail. I hope we can do it for less than $500 million. You know, when you look at these figures, it kind of boggles the mind. We're like 1.2 billion on obligations, plus that we get close to $2 billion. For a city our size, that's a huge challenge. So we're going to have to think of every creative funding mechanism we can, and absolutely, you should separate the mental, I hate to use that word, but those who are facing those challenges from the other criminal population. It's not fair to either group, but especially those who are facing those challenges. So whether we do that in terms of you know, having smaller hospitals, or whether we try to increase in West Georgia, which it doesn't look like there's going to be the budget from the state for that. You know, I'm open to either model. We talk a lot about public-private partnerships. Perhaps that's a place where we could see some private funding help us have some, discrete campuses that are not warehousing folks, because I think that's a problem.
So, with things that are going on in the city, my wife and I talk about this all the time. We talk to people in the community, and we love to get feedback about what they're feeling, what they see, and what they want to see get done. We know that collaboration is key, and it's something that you have to have on being a city council member. Citizens come up and get on the public agenda, and they have concerns about for whatever reason they have a concern. They come up there and they voice their concern. What would you say as a city council member you would do to help citizens build trust with the city council members? Because maybe they feel like city council doesn't care, or maybe they feel like city council can't empathize with what they're going through. So as a city council member, what would you do to help citizens understand and know that, hey, I care, I see you, and I hear you?
Number one, I would just listen. I know this is a crazy idea, but I'm like you, I'm there. They're on their phones. They're all of a sudden they've got to go back there and take care of nature. All of a sudden at once. So that kind of disengagement, again going back to trust, sends a powerful message that your opinion doesn't really matter to me. Or this, like again, the current guy sitting there, it's such a chore to sit there and listen to these public comments. I mean, why in the world would you be in public office if that's your attitude? That should be number one. You are not qualified for this position because you don't really care what the public thinks. I've seen some of my opponents just sitting there playing with their phones. And phones are addictive. But when you're there, be be engaged, listen, and if you can possibly help address that, whether it's the 311 app or with the rep that's in that district, then do so. Do what you can. And if you really can't come up with a solution right there, then, tell folks. Sometimes, people ask rhetorical questions, what appears to be rhetorical questions. There really are questions, and very seldom is there any engagement or any response. And I understand, you don't want to get into litigation, but on the other hand, where's the decent human exchange in that? Why can't you respond?
Right. And that's a good question. We pay attention to the patterns, right? If you have positive things to say, most times you get a response, thank you, and we appreciate you being here. But if you have genuine questions and concerns, follow up, want some answers, it's like a brick wall. And so, to me, the emotional intelligence of most of our city councilors are not where it should be. Even if you don't like what I had to say or you don't agree with what I have to say, you're an elected official, and we expect for you still to do service and communicate and things of that nature. Like, do you know if there's anything to offer city council members who behave this way, or how would you influence them from your position not to? Because you seem very measured and very grounded, and that we wouldn't expect this form of behavior from you. So what do you say to other counselors?
I mean, I would try to talk to them behind the scenes and say, you know, you're making us all look bad, right? It's not just you up there. Folks think we all just don't care. We're just a bunch of stone statues, and we're going to do what we want to do. We go through this ordeal twice a month, and then we just can't wait to get out of there. So I would definitely talk to them behind the scenes and say, come on, you know, folks, we're all in this together, and do show a little emotional intelligence, show just a little basic concern and compassion for what people are going through. That's not difficult, you know. I would also like to see some parliamentary reforms. I think, you know, the way they're doing is they can speak as long as they want on any topic. You know, right? You know, and that just so disrespects the public, right? You know, and sometimes you'll see the most important things come up like at 11:30 at night. Nobody's there, or if they're there, they're so fried, they're not going to make great decisions. So, you know, I taught Model UN. I know parliamentary procedure really well, and one of the things I would work super hard at behind the scenes, and this would be, frankly, an uphill struggle, is we can have sensible speaking time. Because if you can't say it in 3 to 4 minutes, you can't say it. And when one person speaks on it, then they're done, right? We can shorten the meetings radically, get more done in less than half the time, and then we can have plenty of time to hear from the public. Right?
It's almost like certain people are having their own personal meetings and no one else is in the room. And it's very disrespectful to the time of citizens, because as it is a concern for citizens that at 9 o'clock most of them can't be there in the morning, and in the evenings they have responsibilities with children or picking up children or games, and so the people that are there, they're there because they care, and you know, they're trying to be civically engaged, but I don't feel like that is appreciated, you know, by the city council.
Yeah, no, you're not alone in that feeling. I think anybody's ever sat in that audience for any length of time feels like, wow, you know, they might as well just have a brick wall between us and them for what they seem to engage with. So, absolutely agree. And I've talked to 2 or 3 of the other candidates running, and to a person, I think all the new candidates, well, I won't say all of them, but in other districts agree that parliamentary reform is long overdue.
Very good.
Yeah.
One of the things that is a concern for me as well is that in the spirit of transparency and integrity, you can't pick and choose which you know, policies or ordinance you want to be held accountable to. The HR department for the sheriff's department explained to me that they are not allowed to take pictures in uniform with candidates, right? And then they referred me to the HR department, which they have it on policy, but nothing was done about it. And so you have candidates, specifically in your race, who are taking pictures with people in uniform, which gives the impression that this is an endorsement.
Formal endorsement of the whole department.
Yeah, and nothing's being done about it. And so when it's been brought to their attention, it's brick wall again. There's no response. Our legal department will need to get with you, but there's no response. And you have certain counselors up there who are aiding and abiding in this. They don't see a problem with that, but they see a problem with other things. As a council person, would you hold your peers accountable to this type of behavior?
No, that's a great point. We have a new HR director, so maybe she's, you know, wants to listen and wants to start off on a better foot. Maybe I'm not saying anything bad about the past one, but I think she might be eager to listen to concerns of fellow councilors as well as the public. We've got to be uniform on this, and if this rule is good for everyone, it needs to be applied. You know, another thing we can do is what's happening is a lot of the election and civil monitoring is going from the local to the state. I'm not necessarily crazy about that. I understand why it's happening, but they say they'll be responsive to complaints. You have to complain, though. Use that word. You have to make a suggestion before 6 weeks before the election. But we're still in that period of time now, so that may be something I can talk to the state about. They of course have power to do something if they want to do it. I mean, frankly, I've seen quite a few irregularities from campaign finance reporting, inconsistencies, and that concerns me. I don't want to be the, hey, you know, what do they call it, the rat, you know.
Well, it's about standards, it's about principle, it's, you know.
But I agree, you know, we need, if we're going to have these rules, we need, and they're a good reason for them, right? So, yeah, you've given me some thoughts of things I need to follow up on.
So it's okay to be the rat when you're thinking about the citizens of this city. I just want to let you know that.
I appreciate that.
I'm serious.
All right, I'll get my rat whiskers on.
It's definitely not okay. It's you know, it's a lot of optics. It's a lot of, you know, just getting away with it, and it's like a thumb in your face. I can get away with this, and there's nothing that can be done about it. And when you're an elected official, you're co-signing it. It makes it even worse, especially when you have been very hard on other things. You know.
I mean, I'm trying to run a very clean campaign, and one hopes that based upon our vision and principles and abilities, you're going to win. But again, I know in the past these kind of shenanigans have helped turn elections, so I need to again be a little more concerned and speak up about that.
So, if you could speak to, you talked a little bit in the beginning about Westfield. If you could speak to why the location, current location of Westfield was chosen, what it means for South Columbus, and so the citizens in South Columbus, particularly in Oakland Park, South Lumpkin Road, Green Hills, Fort Bend Road, and those areas, are concerned about economic development and infrastructure. Now, I'm a native of Columbus, born and raised, and I grew up on the south side of Columbus. And I can tell the difference of what it is now and what it used to look like. We used to have a sense of pride, and we love South Columbus, but not so much now because, and it breaks my heart to see, you know, how far South Columbus has gone down. And, you know, citizens they're concerned about their fixed income. And so there's supposed to be a $10 million project. It's supposed to be happening on South Lumpkin Road. And, you know, we hear candidates talk about they want to invest, or people want to invest and bring businesses to South Columbus. But they're, like I said, the citizens are concerned, okay, am I going to be pushed out of my home? Am I going to lose? They're concerned about things they're going to lose based on investors investing in South Columbus. I know Westfield is there, so I just want to, you know, hear you say or talk about, you know, why that location was chosen, and what does that mean for South Columbus?
Okay, well, on Westville particularly, Westville has struggled for years, you know, in its old location. The economics weren't making sense. And so we, at the board at the time, we looked at a variety of locations. One that was really pushed a lot was Stone Mountain. I didn't like that for various reasons. And so there was a land swap deal, is my understanding, that Fort Benning had some interest, whether they were willing to swap with the city of Columbus. I'd have to honestly go back and look at what occurred, but it was a low cost thing. You could acquire that land at low cost. And the hope was also with the National Infantry Museum anchoring that area, there would be like a one-stop thing. You have folks going to Oxbow, National Infantry Museum, and then down to Westville. Unfortunately, that occurred right as the pandemic was starting, so the timing couldn't have been worse. And we weren't even able to bring all the buildings up from the other location. So hopefully it's picking up. Again, we just kind of reopened, and I said I'm no longer on that board. Just a few weeks ago, we had a celebration of those who've been supporting it. And again, I hope it could live up to its potential because, at its best, it could draw folks from the tri-state area, and it could get people to stay. But again, it goes back to the problem. There are a lot of restaurants and other options for people to stay and dine, and so it's one of those chicken and the egg things, which one comes first, and I think we really do need to work on those enterprise funds to locate the small businesses. And again, it's great if we can bring a $10 million project as long as it doesn't dislocate people. I'm not privy to that, so I need to learn more about what's going on there. But I'm worried, when there's gentrification, when there's one big, industry comes and crowds out the neighbors in that area. So again, it's one step at a time. I don't want to overpromise to say that we can transform South Columbus in a year or two, but we can certainly start. We can certainly take the steps that I'm talking about to bring South Columbus up to where it could be, maybe once was a little bit more in the past. I think I don't want to glorify the past because I certainly know there are problems. But we have a lot of turnover, a lot of transients. People don't want to stay there for various reasons. And let's try to make Columbus a place where people are proud to call home. They want to stay there. And then, the more soldiers, the more people, then that increases our tax base, and that allows us to hold the line on the taxes. Now, I don't think I said it before, but the proposals in front of the Georgia General Assembly to get rid of both property tax and income tax altogether would be an absolute disaster for all parts of Columbus, especially South Columbus, right? Because that is the steady funding that we require. But that can be redone. Income taxes should be bracketed, and they should be certainly, for folks at the highest brackets, they should pay more income tax. And that's just a basic notion of fairness. If I have $1 billion, for me, 20% of that is nothing, right? But if you are making minimum wage or lower, 20% is a lot for you. So we need to get rid of this. I think the right wing has kind of gone, frankly, as far as it can go. We're going to come back to fairness. On property taxes, again, it should be indexed so those who are on fixed income, older, maybe starting, they need to be paying a lower percentage. Yeah, I left my water there. I think so. They should be paying a lower percent of their property taxes. These are ways that we have more fairness and that we can help neighbors thrive. I was just this morning, this lady was in absolute tears. She was a widow and she's retired, and she says, income tax rebate, well, I don't pay income tax, right? Because I'm on a fixed income. That doesn't help me at all. So we have got to have tax fairness. And it seems like those who are writing the tax code right now just don't get it. They don't care about it. So I work with our state delegation the best I can, until the wind's kicking up, to try to put, I know Carol Hook is against it, we really need to push back against those ideas. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just to, and we're winding down for this session, so we're going to give you opportunity to just, tell the people, in short, just give them, what your platform is all about, the foundation of your platform. You already talked about why you're running, but if you could speak to, the main pillars of your campaign and what you're looking to do, and how that will have a positive impact on City Council.
Okay. All right, I have three main pillars or issues. I separate my issues from my attributes. The three main issues are transparent, ethical, and responsive leadership. The things that we see are really lacking in a lot of folks on City Council, especially the one right now in District 9. That means that I listen and respond to what you are concerned about, and I don't take, some people when they get there, they're really tempted by big money or other inducements. I'm proud that I have scrimped and saved on teacher's salary. I'm financially stable, so I'm not tempted by financial or other inducements. And so that's what I mean by transparent, ethical, and responsive leadership. Number two, we have an affordability and a sustained employment crisis in this city. That should be, our number one priority. We should be thinking about how does this policy help reduce everyday costs, what people pay at the pump, at the grocery store, and so forth. What can we do locally? We can't do everything locally, but we can do a lot of things to help bring those utility bills down and try to deal with this affordability crisis. We can do what I'm talking about with the enterprise funds. We can help employment where people live. It's great if we get a gargantuan factory, but we can't count on that, at least not in the short term. So affordability and sustained development. Again, I have real concerns about how sustainable a data center is, for example. Does it bring a couple thousand construction jobs, and then they're gone, and they're not local? And you're left with maybe a couple of dozen people that run the thing, and even there, as we heard Wednesday, they can do that remotely. So I really doubt this 200 job figure that we keep here. That's not sustainable employment. That's not that's not a job creation. That's not sustainable economic development, in my opinion. And then the third pillar is holistic policing. Again, the community policing, the embedded mental health piece, and again, looking at mental health facilities around the city. The three attributes I think I bring that are different than my opponents are a vision, not just short term, not just, okay, we need public safety, everybody agrees to that, but an overall vision of what Columbus can be. You know, we need to plan now for what we want to be 10 and 20 years down the road. A healthier community. 80% of our health comes from what we eat every day. You know, exercise is important, but it pales in comparison to the kind of food choices that are available. And if people don't have those choices, they're just not going to be as healthy as they otherwise could be. Our health is our first wealth. So a healthier community, a community where we break down these silos, we bridge the divide. I believe I'm the only person in this race, at least, that is committed to that dialogue, to using city offices to help break down those silos and build those bridges. And again, trust. If we don't have trust, we don't have anything. Integrity, the center of my campaign. When I give my word, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to hide the ball, you know, try to put up smoke and mirrors and distract the public from what's really going on. I'm going to be as upfront as I possibly can be. And then finally, competence. I bring those 35 years of policy knowledge and academic research, 20 years of practical applied political experience to actually translate public preferences into public policy. And I think, again, on each one of these things, I'm different than my opponents. I hope people will at least take a few moments and look at us side by side and say, okay, what attributes and what platform does this person bring? Are they just running for ego, for retribution, for all the reasons that you should run? I think I'm running for all the right reasons.
You think or you know?
I know I'm running for all the right reasons. I'm going to be clear. She's still working on it.
Usually you close us out. I don't have any more questions. This has been wonderful and very thorough in your thoughts and communication. Clarity was very clear, everything that you stated. And it's very apparent that you do bring the experience and the knowledge to, you know, sit in that seat and represent at large well. And that's exactly what we're looking for, people who are going to fight for the citizens, you know, in a measured and respectful way, and not have their own personal motives and agendas. And so, again, thank you so much for being here. Any statements or comments?
Well, I'm sorry. I got a question. Because it just hit me. I live in District 6, but I have rental property in District 7.
Okay.
What I've noticed is that a lot of, there seems to be some kind of loophole. I'm not exactly sure how they're doing this, but I've had, like the house went up for sale next door to me, okay? And then there's these couple that don't even look like they belong together, move in for a year, maybe less. And it's like they flipping the homes, driving up the cost of the property, and then, so that's causing people who are looking for property to buy a home. Of course, they're buying a more expensive home than it needs to be, as well as their taxes is more. Of course, those who are already sitting there, we're locked in on our taxes, but it's causing new people that's coming in to pay more for the house and then pay more taxes. Is there some kind of way the loophole could be closed, or can there somebody, because I'm also noticing that they're gentrifying in District 7, where my rental property is at, and that's one of the reasons I refuse to sell, because I'm like, y'all want to jump up the rents. You know, they're either buying a home to flip it, or they're buying it for rental property. It is not for a single family home, it's for rental property, and then it's for higher rent. So is there some kind of way that y'all as city council can look at that, because it's affecting new people coming in, you know, because the new neighbor that just bought the house was astronomical cost. Of course, I'm not mad in the sense that it's my property value went up. but at the expense of someone. I'm not okay with that.
Right.
You understand? So, and there's also the additional taxes that they're paying on this house. When I know for sure that house is not as big as mine, and no way I would pay that amount for that house. I wouldn't even pay that amount for my house. You know, so there's some kind of way that can be looked at, because it's happening citywide. Whether they're buying it to flip it and then just use it for rental property, or they buy it just to flip it, is causing people either not to maybe want to come live here as well. So, I mean, it's something that needs to be looked at.
It does. I mean, part and parcel of that affordability agenda is housing. That's probably, the most expensive, most thing that all of us are going to face is our housing costs. And Columbus has, I think, in some ways, much worse than the average city problem. Our supply is too low. I don't want to impute causation, but there are at least 3 members of city council who are primarily realtors, right? And I think if that's your mindset, you are going to favor realtors' interest, which is to drive the cost, ever higher. They are not really concerned about the lack of availability. And so we need to be building more affordable houses. There was a really great presentation from Georgia Tech. And again, it's one of those things that was not at a convenient time for a lot of people. But they talk about the lack of supply. That's the number one thing. They also talk about some of the restrictions that are put in that make it more expensive to build houses. So again, there's not a good, it's not starter home, so to speak, and people will then go to Alabama where it's just so much cheaper, both in taxes in terms of the home. We do have short-term rental restrictions, but as far as other rental restrictions, that's something we need to look at. Because our UDOs, our codes, our zoning doesn't take that into account. And again, I see so many people priced out of the homes that they may have had for generations, because the property taxes, when they go up, they can't afford those yearly property taxes in a place they've been in forever. So it's a crucial, critical problem. I haven't seen any systematic attempt to address it on city council. So again, part of my affordability agenda, that would be right center on what you're talking about.
That was a great question.
It is so key. It is.
All right, so we want to say thank you to everybody who joined us, and don't take it lightly. Thank you for those who are watching. It's been a pleasure, Dr. Van Doorn. We really appreciate you being here and showing up. We all know that local government directly impacts our lives daily, and we do these forums, and these forums are necessary so that voters can be informed, the community can be informed, and make stronger decisions. So we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And that's going to conclude this session.
Yeah, what's great about this is that we're learning more information, and we get to go out into our community here and share, what we've learned as well.
I'd be grateful if you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you so much.
Wow, that was a great question.
Yeah, it really
I
was.
believe